This is Monocle on Fashion, a show on Monocle Radio offering global perspectives and nuanced conversation on the worlds of fashion and style. I'm Natalie Theodosi, your host and Monocle's fashion director. Today we're en route to Paris after a few days at Milan Fashion Week, which were packed with designer debuts, debates on the new collections, and a very emotional tribute to Giorgio Armani on Sunday night. To kick things off, Associate Editor Grace Charlton joins me to discuss one of fashion's most divisive designers, Demna, and his debut at Gucci.
When I saw it, my initial reaction was just pure delight.
We are then looking ahead to Paris, where Jonathan Anderson is getting ready to debut his first womenswear collection for Dior. Monocle's creative director, Richard Spencer Powell, offers his expert take on the campaign's Anderson debut just before the show.
It's a quiet start, I would say. I would quite like to see him pushing and challenging and turning it on its head a little bit.
For our big interview of the week, we sit down with Peter Copping, Lanvin's newly appointed creative director, who will be showing his sophomore collection for the label in less than 24 hours.
When people say, well, who's your muse? And I would just say, well, for the moment, it's Jeanne Lanvin.
This and more coming up on Monocle on Fashion. Grace Charlton and I have been having debates about Demna for a few years now. She thinks he's the designer of our generation. I have mixed feelings. Following the debut of La Famiglia, his first collection and accompanying film for Gucci, we wanted to bring the conversation on air and see if she would convert me. So I think before we talk about the collection, we should speak about Demna as a creative, because he's a divisive figure. And over the last year, we've been kind of having a little debate about his work and whether he should have gotten that big Gucci job. So tell me, Grace, what is it about Demna that you've been kind of admiring so much over the years?
It's funny because he doesn't necessarily create clothes that I would wear, but from afar I can see that he is the designer of my generation or your generation, like that sort of millennial Gen Z. He's an intellectual, but not too much. He's irreverent, but he's also got like incredible, this eye. He understands things like archetypes. When he was announced as the creative director of Gucci, in my head it made total sense, and it broke my heart to see the market like plummeting because I don't trust in Demna, but I trust in Demna, and I feel honestly victorious this week as he's released his collection La Famiglia. How are you feeling, Natalie?
I mean, I'm curious. Like you say it that you wouldn't wear a lot of those clothes, but you still think he's the right person for such a job. That's what I don't understand. And also for me, while I do agree with a lot of this, and especially the beginning of what he was doing at Balenciaga, I was a fan. I just thought he had pushed it a little bit too far, and that I still expect beauty especially from a house like Balenciaga, Gucci as well. And at some point, it just people looked angry, distorted, and it was almost like, I like when you're being a bit sarcastic and you're poking fun at the industry, even at the customer a little bit, but this was a new level of making fun at everyone, almost like giving them the middle finger, and it's like, I will make you pay for thousands of pounds for things that make no sense.
Yeah, he had a very sort of eat the rich spirit almost. I felt like his time at Balenciaga had come to an end and he'd push that idea to the extreme. I agree with you there. But I think at Gucci, he's going to sort of have to re-implement beauty and sort of, do you know what I mean? Like, I think it was actually a perfect time for him to switch and to refocus on fashion in itself, less of, you know, his sort of exhaustion that he was probably feeling at the clients, like you said, and all of that.
And I think, and that's where I was converted. So this debate is not quite as heated as I thought it would be, because my views have changed a little bit since then. The initial reaction, and maybe why the market also plummeted, like you were saying, was that, oh, he's going to do more sweatshirts and streetwear. We're going to see Balenciaga, but now done at Gucci. And I think everyone is tired of that. And my hope was that if you're going to do it differently. And it's you still have, like, which is expected, these Demna isms, but it's sarcastic enough, but there's also a lot of beautiful items and also reinterpreting the codes, which is the main brief of the job. So, yeah, first reactions when you saw La Familia and the way that he chose to launch it as well, which I find that's quite interesting and very smart.
When I saw it, my initial reaction was just pure delight because, like I said earlier, he's someone...
So we're talking to a super fan here.
Honestly, yeah. He loves an archetype and he's found the most fertile ground in Milan. The collection La Familia, this family that he's presenting, he described it as, he's trying to find the Gucci-ness of Gucci. He's got these models who are modeling the clothes and they've all got names like La Bomba, and that's Alex Consani wearing a tiger print fur coat and not much else, or, you know, Miss Aperitivo in a little sequin dress.
The influencer.
Yeah, the influencer. I think there's one called like the Heart Stealer, the Introvert, the Principessa, and that amazing like feathered pink ball gown. I just hope that actually my only concern is that Milan, okay, is fertile ground at the moment because he hasn't really been there, but how will he just keep doing the Italian stereotype again and again? Maybe that's my one, like, oh, okay, he's going to have to develop the language a little bit deeper than these sort of more like superficial archetypes.
Yeah, but to kind of start things off, I think it's such a fun way to do it. And maybe I didn't have the same reaction of pure delight. I wouldn't go that far. But I smiled when I saw it. And it's funny, you know, when you see this kind of cliches, and he knows that it's a cliche. He's not taking it seriously. And you see, La Bomba with the fur coat and all this. And he speaks about being unapologetically sexy and the return of glamour. And I think that's another interesting thing to talk about, that we seem to be, I mean, there were Gucci earrings, there's the Gucci, the logo belt.
Yeah,
it's
the return
loud.
of the belt.
So it's a return of those archetypes and a return of something a lot more kind of outrageous and fun and glamorous, which I think that is a good thing. People have been playing it safe for way too long.
Yeah, the belt really cracked me up. He knows exactly what he's doing. I remember when everyone was wearing the Gucci logo belt in like 2015, 2016, and now that's 10 years ago and he's bringing it back, ironically. That detail literally cracked me up.
I'm just not sure how it's going to translate on the streets. It might be a bit less ironic and curated and it's just plain bad, but we have to see. On a very different note, but in a much more minimalist world, Jill Sander has also just debuted its new collection under Simone Bellotti. You saw Simone at the Jill Sander showroom when you were there to do an interview with Renzo Rosso. What was first kind of gut reaction when you saw that collection?
So Simone Bellotti is an ultra minimalist, and his collections, when he was working at Bali before this and now at Jill Sander looking at the collection just now, he honestly makes me feel an emotion of like aspiration and a desire to like embody whatever he is putting out there. Like it's a crazy, like I see it and I'm like, yes, like clean cuts, the color palette is perfect, the cobalt blue, the cream, the white, the lots of black, obviously it's Jill Sander, the slight pink every now and again. We were saying this at a show in London a few days ago, the Tove show, but I feel like if I had that wardrobe, I would be a better person. And that is what Jill Sander and Simone makes me feel. Yeah. What about you? What did you think?
I liked it a lot. I was a bit surprised because having seen a lot of his shows for Bali, they were a little bit more playful. You had a lot of the charms and hardware and kind of exaggerated peplum shapes, and this was kind of stark minimalism.
Germanic.
Yeah, but it's such a tribute to Jill Sander, the woman. I think it felt like a real palette cleanser when you see those very clean first looks. It reminded me a bit of what Mathieu Blasi had done at the beginning of his tenure at Bottega as well. And then as you see the collection evolve, there's like all these beautiful colors, there's more interesting structures, and you can also exactly see how it's going to go into stores and how well it can sell straight from the beginning. So I think it's a big success already, and we're going to be seeing a lot of people wearing those clothes next season.
So, yeah.
Hopefully more than the Gigi Gucci belts.
Yeah, who's tracking it? We need a belt tracker.
Thanks to Grace Charlton, Monocle's associate editor, for joining me here in the studio. It's still unclear who will win the Gucci debate, but I do know that the best fashion does ignite strong feelings and opinions in people. There is nothing worse than indifference. And to keep the conversation going, I've also asked our creative director, Richard Spencer Powell, to discuss the evolution of Loewe and Dior, two brands that might be a little less divisive, but equally influential in shaping the fashion agenda. As soon as I saw the new campaign by Jonathan Anderson, especially, knowing that you were a big fan of what he was doing at Loewe with Paris, I wanted to get your take on the new campaign, the new direction, which was quite different, I thought, to what he was doing before, shot by David Sims and featuring the trio of his new ambassadors that he picked, Greta Lee, Mickey Madison and Mia Goth. So what was first reaction when you saw those images?
I think it's quite nice. I was a big fan. I'm a big fan of Anderson's. The Loewe work I always felt was so creative, and I'm a fan of Paris, who did so much of that support material. He, I think, over the years has done a lot for print, like in-store magazines, fold-out posters, really nice stuff. So I think there's a real trust and belief between that collaboration between him and Paris. I think the new direction is quite slight, I thought, actually. I didn't feel as creative as what they've done before. Very French, I felt. And choosing David Sims is an interesting choice, I thought, because what I saw, it was predominantly still life of bags, so shot in situ in this palace. And obviously Sims is known for his, energetic portrait studio work primarily. He's shot a lot over the years, and in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, he's been very, very prominent. He's featured in a lot of campaigns. A lot of people have used him, but he would not have been my first choice to shoot maybe elegance, and certainly not still life. Not that I'm saying he's done a bad job. It's just I thought that was quite an interesting choice, and interesting this continuation of actresses replacing models, I think, which you see everywhere, and including in, which I know we will talk about, Loewe is all kind of slightly lesser known actors and actresses.
Yeah, I think there's this conversation, especially with Dior, but with all of these designers who are tasked with reviving or finding new directions for this label between past and present, tradition and the future. And it's interesting, that fine balance. And with Dior, Anderson has much bigger budgets, but it's also a bigger house with a lot more expectation. So do you think that it's holding him back in some way, or what direction would you like to see him go into as he develops?
I think I'd like him to play perhaps with the history. I think lots of designers that go into big houses or old houses, there's this sort of phrase, it's from the archive,
Yeah.
We arrived and we went to this incredible archive and we've restored this old logo or this old pattern or this print. You kind of hear that quite a bit. They did that twice at Burberry in the last, 2 makeovers that they did. So I think he's got a hell of a lot of resource material there, I think, and a long history. So there's a lot to be drawn from. But I hope he mixes it up a bit and has some provocations and challenges a little bit, because I think it's a great role he's been given. I think with someone so creative and clear, with a clear vision of art direction, it's a quiet start, I would say, from my perspective. I would quite like to see him pushing and challenging and turning it on its head a little bit in a good way, not change for change's sake. And I think nothing wrong with doing it step by step and a bit of a slow build. So good luck to him.
I couldn't agree more. And he said it. He said that building a house and a new chapter will take time, and that's just the beginning. So let's see what he does. And then over to Loewe, where he left on such a high. So I think actually the Proenza Schuler designers who are now joining Loewe and taking on the job have a much harder task because he had such impact. What did you make of their teaser ahead of the show and the images that they released, which I think surprised everyone? It was a detour from what we're used to from Loewe.
Yeah, I agreed. And I think Loewe, it's a difficult task they've been given there. It's a hard act to follow. Anderson and Loewe is such a darling of the fashion industry. I think everyone likes them. It's a bit like Celine when Phoebe Philo was there. Just absolutely everyone adores them. And they are an interesting brand because they are a fashion house. You know, they sit in Spain, and so it's not where everyone else sits. They have been very, very creative. And I think when I think about Loewe, I think of them primarily as an accessories brand. I think of them as a bags business. And in fact, the store on Bond Street, which I love, and I've shopped a few times, it is primarily an accessories space, I believe. And what's interesting is what this new campaign teaser is. It's very different to what's gone before. So they're obviously making a mark, and without making too obvious a pun, a bit of a splash. Now there's an aquatic theme to this set of images they've released. Very little product on show. 3 actors, actresses that you probably won't know of. I thought quite androgynous, quite homoerotic, a lot of kind of wet skin and water splashing on faces. It reminded me a little bit of some of the older work of Merton Marcus, the photographers. So I think it was an unusual step or first step. Certainly doesn't feel like a continuation of what had gone on before. Bright, colourful. Probably making a lot of noise is quite a good thing because I think it's shifted it on quite quickly. The conversation is going to move rapidly. And the good thing about fashion, and sometimes to its detriment, is that fashion does move very quickly. It has to reinvent itself twice a year. That's part of the deal. So I think for both houses that these things are going to change quite quickly. So again, in a similar way to Dior, I'm interested to see what happens next. And commercially, as a business, how the public reacts to that.
Big thanks to Rich for joining me to talk about Loewe and Dior in anticipation of Paris Fashion Week. We're now staying in Paris, where I got to visit the Lanvin offices on Rue Saint-Honoré to talk to Peter Copping. Few people have a CV as impressive as Peter's. Christian Lacroix, Louis Vuitton, Oscar de la Renta, Balenciaga are just some of the houses he has worked for. Now, as creative director of Lanvin, he is in the process of reviving one of Paris's most important heritage labels. His first collection already received extremely positive feedback, and he's only getting started.
I used to love Karl Lagerfeld, Chanel, those very early shows that he used to do before it became about all the theatrics.
Sure.
It was really great collections, and with Ines de la Fressange as well, modelling and that whole thing. But then I also really liked what he did at Chloe too. And then at the same time, I think you had Jean-Paul Gaultier. It just seemed such an exciting time. And then alongside that, then you had all the Japanese that were coming in and using Paris as their platform and where they'd show. And I think even though it was so radically different from what was going on in the Parisian houses, all those Japanese designers had a real appreciation of the craft and what it stood for. Yeah. Yohji did some amazing collections that were based on Chanel and Dior. And
so you wanted to be kind of in the middle of it all.
Yeah, so I think that's partly it. For fashion at that time, working in Paris did feel very much in the middle of it.
And tell me about choosing the path of couture, which is slower. It's so much about craft and handwork. Why was that right for you, and how did it kind of shape you as a designer?
Well, I guess it was really only at Christian Lacroix on those internships when I really worked as a witnessed couture firsthand. And I think it was just so impressive to see. And then all of the players that would come in, like the embroidery houses where it's all done in Paris at Lesage or at Montex, these amazing houses who have great craftspeople. And I can, even before then, I started further on in my career, say then at Louis Vuitton, when we had, great budgets to work with. So then it was possible to go back to some of those Parisian embroidery houses that I'd seen Christian Lacroix and work with them, even if it was for the ready-to-wear. So I do like the pace of the couture, that you really take time to study something and go into a lot of detail. And obviously then fast forward to when I was kind of very much behind the scenes and under the radar at Balenciaga. So it was nice to go back and work on that couture collection, because that was even a slower pace, because we just developed one collection per year rather than two. And I think that's something that Demna had always said, that he loved that sort of the two paces, like going like a high-speed train on the ready to wear, but like couture just like strolling along, really time to investigate things and make things that just wouldn't be possible.
And it takes confidence to say, right, that yes, everyone is speeding along, but for this, I'm going to take my time. And And do you apply, I mean, of course, you've also done ready to wear in other positions and now at Lanvin, but do you apply this mindset in some ways, or this couturier approach?
I think I do. Yeah, that would be fair to say. And then partly through technique, but then not going so far that it makes a piece like a couture piece, but taking certain elements and applying them in a ready-to-wear way. I think you can. When I was at Christian Lacroix, I was absolutely obsessed with all the couture clients. Because the front row would sometimes be Lynn Wyatt, Nan Kempner, all these American amazing, and they all looked so good and loved clothes and loved dressing up. So they'd all be there in the front row, and from backstage I'd always sneak out before the show started to see them all, and I took photographs of them and things. But then at Balenciaga, the clientele had completely changed, and if you look at a couture client today, it can be Jordan Roth or someone like that, It's really fantastic, because when I see him, there's a complete parallel to those American heiresses, In some ways, it's just people that love clothes and have the means to be able to indulge themselves. At Balenciaga, we had some really eccentric clients, and I just love those people that are really out there and not scared of wearing some of these really strong pieces.
And it's great that you're kind of so open to it, and to something that's so much steeped in tradition, to changing and evolving with the times. And I guess now you're doing something quite different. So I'd love to just hear, when that offer came to the table, what was the appeal?
Well, because it's such a beautiful house, I think, with a really wonderful history. And it's a house I've always known just through being interested in fashion and learning about things. Obviously, I really liked the period with Albert. I was a big fan of him and his work. So just to be given the opportunity to be part of the history of the house was like a real honor. Didn't hesitate for 1 second.
And when you kind of came on board, did you want to look at the archives quite intently? Did you, what's kind of some different people have different approaches. It's either I don't want to look at it at all, I want to dive in.
I really basically couldn't wait to, do you know what I mean? And like got in through the door, well, where is it, the archive? I want to see it. But no, definitely. And I think for me, it was really going back to the roots of the house. So really looking pretty much solely at the Jeanne Lanvin period. Mm-hmm. I think also the incredible thing is that it seems very relevant today, just looking, the more I mean, I thought I knew a lot about it, but I think quite often with books, they always feature the same pieces. So you see a lot of the same things, but then just discovering the archive and the house and everything that it had, you know, there was more and more to see. And we have our own great archive because Jeanne Lanvin was wanting to open a museum herself at one period. So I think that's why she archived things so thoroughly. But then Galliera has a beautiful collection, and they were very generous in letting me visit with the team and look at as many pieces I wanted to from their collection. They particularly had quite a lot of pieces from the 30s.
Amazing.
So that was probably the period that I was most drawn to, because I think it felt, as I said, very relevant today.
It's interesting because I was speaking with a costume designer, Catherine Martin, who was also saying the same, that she's been looking for inspiration and looking at the late 20s, the 30s, and drawing parallels to...
Yes. I mean, in our own collection, we have a lot of 20s pieces, so the decoration is really beautiful on them. But I find just the straight up and down silhouette, well, it feels very much of that period somehow. So I think just like the 30s silhouettes, which just have an ease and a comfort, makes it very right for today. You know, it wasn't like Dior in the 50s with a corset inside or anything like that. So their clothes, I think, which are probably very wearer friendly in a way. But I think that's something that appeals to me about it.
Was there anything that surprised you that you found? Because you said, like you were saying, that in public they keep repeating the same pieces, but I'm sure there's like a wealth of other designs as well.
Well, the other thing, I really wanted to look at a lot of things, but I didn't want to get over academic about it, because I thought if I got too clever about it, I'd have just ended up in a hole, you know. So I just kind of cherry picked from things that I saw. I wanted to change it all up, you know, in some way to just make it feel of today. So like say maybe some of the more iconic pieces became t-shirts, embroidered t-shirts for men. So I just thought that gave it a good twist. And then a lot of her things, the embellishment was quite often on the sleeve. So it's like, I like that idea. I'm going to do something with. And then also contrasting the fabrics a lot, so that then one of the ones that was a worked sleeve went on a black velvet sort of column dress. I think there's definitely parallels between us. And like when I go along to her office, you see all these textiles that she bought from her travels, and it's like so exciting to see, and definitely the sort of things that stimulate me are some of the sources that she probably used as well.
And tell me, how is it? I mean, now you've had a very successful first debut. How is it? Is there going to be continuity, or how is it evolving as you prepare?
I'd say complete continuity, because I don't, you know, people say, what are you going to do next for the next collection? It's kind of like, well, we're going to do the same thing, because there's so much to draw upon and look at, and you know, and I think that's still very, very exciting. You know, even just alone, you know, this is going to be a summer collection, so that opens up something else, and there's so many facets and aspects of her work that can be interesting to draw upon.
Any clues about the
Well,
what's on your mood board for the collection?
well, like I've been looking at things like this. This is actually a Jeffrey Bean dress, but when it's so funny because when you look at his work, so much of it is inspired by her. There's a Lanvin dress which has it's open back and it just has this graphic big sort of sharp triangle up the back. So I kind of like the idea of looking at quite graphic, sharp things.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, looking at that, but remembering the first collection is also some incredible day wear.
Yeah.
Is that something that you want to do to bring the two worlds together?
Yeah, completely. I think it's because as much as, Lanvin has always been about kind of evening wear and a very sophisticated look, but, people aren't wearing that all day long. Mm-hmm. Although that's what I love now. Some people are, I just saw a woman walking down the street the other day in this full sequin skirt, which I love that as well, that people can do that. But part of that comes for the day very much comes through knitwear for me. Mm-hmm. And there's something like then, well, Iceberg was kind of a knit house, except it would have had a big Donald Duck. But after that, I went to Sonia Ricky. So I wasn't doing the knitwear. I wasn't working on the knitwear there, but it was nonetheless all around. So I really enjoy working with knitwear and.
So it's in some ways you're drawing all the different parts of your life and your career and bringing it together. Yeah.
Which was going back to like the experience I had at Balenciaga, which was really interesting because it was, it was completely in some ways that, yes, it might have been working on a couture collection, but it was completely out of my comfort zone, and to be working for Demna was really inspiring and very interesting. And just to have the design teams that were there, they all saw things in a very different way and got excited by completely different things. So it was a good thing.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that and working for someone like Demna and kind of what is it like working a little bit more behind the scenes and with a creative director that also has a big personality and a vision and then kind of being back on the spotlight? Do you enjoy both? I
think, I wouldn't say I'm someone that has a huge ego. And I do like working with a team and kind of directing a team. Some of the designers now within the team are really very young. So I think they've got a lot that they can learn, but I can still learn a lot from them as well. So it creates a nice dynamic, I think. Because I worked, behind the scenes with Marc Jacobs for 12 years. And that was really a great experience because, he delegate a lot and he really allowed me to take on board a lot of things. But I wasn't, say, desperate to be a creative director. Sure. It just kind of happened naturally.
And when you were saying you like Karl Lagerfeld's Chanel shows without the theatrics, or when you think about shows today, do you find that we have reached a stage where intimacy and privacy signal luxury much more than the theatrics and the celebrities?
I think in a way that's true. I mean, looking at some of those shows, they kind of make you feel quite anxious, I think, when you see the crowds outside them and the whole thing inside. I definitely wanted to create something that felt very intimate for the first show, and it was a relatively small space. I think we only had about 350 people that attended.
when you see, I mean, the competition or the market, and then now there's all these changes happening, where do you see Lanvin kind of sitting, and who is it catering to? Because there's a lot of gaps now to fill in this market.
Yeah. I mean, I think, people who enjoy dressing, so that they can come and they can appreciate the craft and also, the present collection, but the house as a whole.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I think you want to for it to appeal to multi-generations. I'd love to dress people of different age groups. The men's collection is very important for me as well. So I want the menswear to stand alongside the women's wear, so...
There was a lot of excitement about you designing menswear for the first time. What was that like?
Well, I guess I'm lucky in some ways, because I think had I been doing it 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been so easy. So, yes, I'm not saying it was easy, but I can remember someone asking me when I was at Nina Ricci, well, do you want to do a men's collection? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Nina Ricci is such a feminine house, I could never see men's collection as part of this, really. It wouldn't make sense. But say I used to go back there now, I think I'd say we really have to do menswear, because...
It's gotten more free.
Yeah, it was definitely, with a sense of femininity within men's collection isn't something that's strange now.
So you don't have to put a very different hat on when you're doing your menswear. It's kind of all works together.
Really, and I think probably with men's there's an element of precision in the tailoring and things like that, which I feel quite comfortable doing anyway. So I like that, and I really enjoyed doing it. I have to say, Lanvin used to have a huge menswear business in the past, so hopefully we'll get back to that, and it has gone more so now, because part of the business that drives the house are the trainers and the things. So people buy the clothes that go with that. A number of people said, but it seems like the menswear is like the son of the woman that's buying the collection. So I thought, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm happy that we've got that young client who can dress in a cool way, but we just need to expand on that and let people know that there's other things that you can buy, and there's a real sort of fashion collection here again, where there is tailoring and great knitwear, good coats, so that men can start to come back.
Yeah, and it sounds like, you've got carte blanche in a way to rebuild, of course, I'm sure it wasn't easy for the business the last few years, but now there's really a lot of room. Yeah.
And I think especially because I want to be so loyal to the house spirit, it's not like I want to come in and do something that feels not akin to the style.
Yeah. And in that spirit, is it you find also that the story of Jeanne Lanvin herself, beyond her designs, like her life, and that's something that needs to be told more and celebrated?
I think it should in a way. I think she really deserves to be more known. It's quite funny, because when people say, well, who's your muse? And I just say, well, for the moment, it's Jeanne Lanvin, she's an amazing woman. I liked... For the first collection, I also looked at her personal style, things that she wore. And again, there's other elements that I want to use for the next show collection that come particularly from her wardrobe and the way she wore things herself.
Yeah. It sounds incredible, the process, like through the last year of looking at her or going and visiting the archives and building this world back up.
Yeah, because I also went along to the Museum of Art Decorative, and where I was able to see her bathroom and then also her bedroom. And
what was that like?
Normally that's cordoned off, but going there outside of hours, I was actually allowed to go in the room. And I did that probably only just a couple of weeks after arriving in the house. And I think that was quite a crucial moment, because I think being in what was her bedroom, seeing the level of sophistication, really gave me quite a sharp understanding of who she was and how she lived her life. And it was a really great moment, I have to say.
That was Peter Copping, Artistic Director at Lanvin. And that's all for today's show. Stay tuned for more updates from Paris next week. Today's episode was produced and edited by Lily Austin. I'm Natalie Theodosi. Thank you so much for listening.